What happens when a leader knows he might die, but continues anyway? In this chapter from King Alive by Jonathan Eig, we see Martin Luther King Jr. in the final months of his life, tired, under attack, politically isolated, and yet more radical, more determined, and more human than ever. This isn't the king of the I have a dream speech. This is the king in his most vulnerable state, and arguably very, very dangerous. To give you context, the chapter begins in late 1967 when King is invited to Memphis to support Black political candidates, but he initially declines. At the same time, something much bigger is happening behind the scenes. The FBI is actively working to stop him. They label him a potential messiah who could unify Black Americans, and they make him a primary target. So while King is publicly leading a movement for justice, the government is privately trying to undermine him. The tension defines the entire chapter. At this point, King is no longer focused only on segregation in the South. He is expanding the fight. He begins speaking about poverty, economic injustice, housing discrimination in the North, and the Vietnam War. He launches what becomes the Poor People's Campaign, a plan to bring thousands of poor Americans to Washington, D.C. in a massive act of nonviolence protest. And this is a turning point because King is no longer just asking for civil rights. He is demanding a radical restructuring of society, including redistribution of wealth. That shift makes many former allies uncomfortable. Even other civil rights leaders begin to doubt him. But one of the most powerful parts of this chapter is how human King becomes. We see him exhausted, depressed, losing support, and constantly receiving death threats. We see moments of vulnerability. He talks about death often. He struggles with leadership pressure, and even his team begins to question him. At one point, he becomes so frustrated that he walks out of a meeting in rage. Coretta describes him as terribly distressed. This is not the confident, untouchable icon we usually imagine. This is a man carrying the weight of a movement and starting to feel it breaking him. Everything shifts when King is called to Memphis again. This time is urgent. 2 Black sanitation workers have been killed on the job, and hundreds of others go on strike demanding dignity, fair wages, and safety. Their message is simple: I am a man. King realizes this is exactly what his movement is about, not just legal rights, but human dignity. Memphis becomes the launching point for his national campaign. But things don't go as planned. A protest turns violent, a young Black teenager is killed, and the media blames King. Suddenly, his commitment to nonviolence is being questioned. Despite everything, King returns to Memphis, and this leads to one of the most iconic moments in history, his mountaintop speech. In it, he reflects on death openly. He says, I've been to the mountaintop, and I've seen the promised land. And he asks, I may not get there with you. This moment is chilling. It kind of becomes prophetic. He knows the danger he's in, and yet he chooses to continue. The next day, Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. He was only 39 years old, and his death didn't bring peace. It ignited something else. Cities across America erupted. Memphis burned, Detroit burned, Washington, D.C. burned. More than 100 cities went up in flames. Dozens of Black men were killed. Thousands were arrested. It was as if the country itself was reacting to a truth it could no longer ignore. One activist said, "Every racist in this country has killed Dr. King."